Hi everyone, my name is Kate Amrine and I'm a trumpet player in the New York City area, and this video is going to be about commissioning. So this excerpt of the video is actually from my presentation titled Breaking Boundaries, Diversity in the Brass World that I put together with my colleagues Melissa Munoz and Chloe Swindler for the recent International Trumpet Guild Conference. Our presentation had a lot of really important things to say about diversity in the brass world, as well as two awesome trumpet ensemble performances, so please check that out if you haven't already. I'll include a link to it in this description. But today we're going to be talking about commissioning, and this is something that I'm super excited about. I've commissioned almost over 30 pieces as a soloist and as a chamber musician. More than half of them are solo trumpet work, so they're either trumpet unaccompanied solos or trumpet and piano pieces or trumpet and electronics pieces as well. And then about 10 of those pieces that I commissioned are for chamber ensembles that I'm a part of. So I have a couple brass quintets that I've commissioned. Some have been through grants, some have been working directly with the composers, and then I've also commissioned almost 10 pieces for my group Spark Duo. So this is something that I'm definitely super passionate about. I love working with new composers and bringing these new pieces to life because, my life as a musician is made so much more richer by playing new music and bringing new music to my audiences that they wouldn't have been able to hear otherwise. So please let me know if you have any questions about commissioning, and I hope this video helps you on your commissioning journey. First thing I want to answer is why we should even commission new works in the first place. I think there, obviously there's so much great repertoire out there already. We see it in orchestras, most of whom actually have been prioritizing music by dead white men, people like Beethoven and Mozart. We're seeing really great repertoire in trumpet recitals with people programming Haydn and Hummel and Tomasi. And obviously I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these big gems of the repertoire kinds of pieces, but by only programming these works, we're sending messages to our audiences. And I think if you stop and ponder, what messages these might be, that you might not actually like what these are implying. So for me, when I go to a concert and the people on stage are only programming, this kind of music by dead white men or by a certain other group, it tells me that they didn't bother to do any research. They didn't bother to find any music that fits their concert theme by a women composer or by a trans composer or by a BIPOC composer, and that they just didn't feel like finding music that would be more representative of what our audiences actually look like. And that's a pretty big thing, and I never want to be, associated with something like that, and I never want my students to do that as well. And this really applies for any kind of concert, whether you're playing an orchestra concert or a trumpet recital or a children's concert, there are people in the audience, maybe future composers or future musicians, and if they're listening to you on stage and you're basically saying with your programming that only men write music or only white men write music, then that person who might have wanted to go into music and be a composer or be a performer is saying, oh, this space isn't for me, I don't belong here, or that space isn't welcoming to someone who looks like me. So that's sort of, why I think it's really important to commission composers. So just to wrap up, when I'm programming works by women composers or BIPOC composers, it's a choice that I'm making to tell my audiences, hey, these are really great works out there. They're really great new gems of the repertoire that you should program, that you should tell your students to program, and to do the research and find these works. There's so many resources out there, and we're going to link some in this discussion as well, so you have them. So please definitely check those out. So now to talk a little bit about how to commission a new work. So there are many different ways of doing this, but I think the best way is just to ask someone that you already know. So this could be someone in the composition department at your school or someone else who who composes on the side or something, and just ask them if they'd be interested in writing a piece for you. So the best way to do that would be picking someone maybe do a little research on them, especially if they're a friend. You might not know the kind of music that they write or the kind of music that they like writing. Maybe they like writing, trumpet and electronics pieces, and you're actually looking for a trumpet and piano piece. So make sure that, it's a good fit between you and the composer. And then also, when you ask them to write a piece for you, don't just say, oh, whatever you write is fine with me. You're not going to necessarily get something that you're happy with. It should be more like, okay, I've done research in you as a composer. I know the kinds of things that you write, and I'm looking for a 5-minute lyrical piece for trumpet and piano. So you're really specific, and then that leads you to asking either whether there's a contract or what this piece is for. Maybe you just need a piece for a recital coming up next month and you're asking a composer now. So that might be like kind of a tough timeline. So you might want to think like, okay, if I have a recital 4 months from now, I should start asking a composer to write me a piece now, and then hopefully they'll get it back to me within a month or two, and then I have 2 months to learn it. So definitely keep the timeline in mind. I know as a performer, I don't like it when someone is sending me this big complicated thing to learn the day before something. Of course, I make it work, but it's not the ideal situation, and we don't want to force composers into that uncomfortable position as well. So now you have your composer that you've chosen, your piece that you're commissioning, and hopefully you eventually get a piece out of this collaboration. And so whether or not there's a contract involved, this is still a relationship that you're building with this new person. And so hopefully when you've asked them to write a piece, you have a performance in mind, because it really sucks when a composer writes you a piece and then you never actually perform it. You know, we don't want to waste their time either. So you have some performances in mind. And maybe you have, ideally actually, you have more than one performance in mind, because it's really, really great if you're going to go through all the trouble to get a new work, you know, into the trumpet repertoire, into the brass community, whether or not it's by an underrepresented composer at all. If it's a really great piece, we want it out there in the world. Other people want to play it, and hopefully you want other people to play it too, because you went through the work of, you know, developing it with this composer. So perform it as much as possible. Tell your colleagues to perform it. Get it listed on other people's, you know, lists of trumpet repertoire so other people can find it. Submit it to ITG or, you know, other conferences as a chance to perform it. And, you know, hopefully by commissioning all of these new pieces, we're all creating a new repertoire for trumpet that is then, you know, much more diverse, much more interesting, and just not as boring as doing all of the same old pieces.